Hello and welcome to this video. I hope to do a quick presentation about how to do the workshop activities for this week. I intend to do exercise 1, the frequency distribution answer question 22, and exercise 2, the cross tabulation for eating frequency to answer question 23. And that should set you up for doing exercise 3 and 4. So if you do exercise 2, you should be able to do exercise 3 and 4 because I'm going to demonstrate how you do the cross tabulation and how to report on that as well. So the first thing you should have done is you should have watched the lectures and watched the tutorial here about how to do frequencies and cross tabs. So that's going to help you a lot, right? The next one is get your textbook open to the case study and also to the bookmark the chapter where we'll be dealing with the chi-squared stuff as well. So you're gonna need to have read the chapters, watch the lectures, and engage with the YouTube video explaining what to do. It's going to make doing the workshop exercises a lot easier, so you know what's going on. So then once you've done that, we download the Wendy's data recoded. Now I've got that running in the background just to save a little bit of time. This is the data file we used last week, the Wendy's data. The recoded data is what we'd done last time. So you can also open up this file and it will give you the output of what you're supposed to get last week. So if what you've looked through in here is different or remarkably different than what you did in your last week's exercise, this is where you're supposed to get up to. So you can see in here, if I click on the data view, and if we move our scroll across a little bit, you can see how we've got all these recoded columns in there and it's worked out for us. We're actually doing data analysis using that recoded data. So I'm just going to go back to the, and if you click this button here, it's going to show you, scroll back to here, what the values are as well. I don't think everyone did that by going into the data view and actually entering in here what the, so in the variable view, not everyone went in here and actually put in the values for their data. So that was something that you need to do as well. So all right, let's go now have a look at what we're doing. So the first one is we want to run a frequency distribution for all variables except respondent ID. And then I want you to answer, why is this analysis useful? So to do that, we're going to open up our SPSS, and this is shown how to do it in the lectures and on the YouTube video. So we go Analyze, we go Descriptive Statistics, we do Frequencies. Now you can press Control A to select all of them and move them across, but of course that's going to have, my computer's having a hard time keeping up here. The respondent ID, we can just bring that back, so we didn't want that one, remember? Now in here we're going to click the statistics one in here, we're going to click the mean, median and mode. We might as well just do standard deviation variance too. We can do these ones here, but the mean, median, mode, they are our central measures of tendency, and obviously standard deviation and variance are important to us as well. So we click continue. All right, and in charts here, we want to do a histogram chart. And I love to, as I said in the video, the other video, I like to show the normal curve on the histogram because it helps us to understand what's going on a bit better. It just maps it out for us. So click continue, then OK. Now this is going to tell us what's going on. It's going to take a while because it's doing a lot of work. It's going to take a fair while. In actual fact, if I bring up my the task manager, and if I show you the performance, you can see my CPU is working quite hard and my graphics card is really going hard. If we go open resources monitor, you don't need to do this, is just to demonstrate how much computing power we're actually using at the moment, and I'm recording at the same time. So my CPU is using a lot of power, so much so I can't even show what's going on. Alright, so I'm just going to close that down. So our computer's at 100%, it's maxing out trying to work this stuff out, which is a good thing because otherwise we'd have to be doing it ourselves. It's just saved us days of work basically. Right, now what we've got here, I'm going to scroll up to the top. So this is our output window in here, and this is the code, which thankfully we don't have to code it. We got a program to do it for us with all the commands. I'm going to maximize that, and this gives us our overall frequencies in there. So how many respondents? We've got a much bigger sample than what we've been using in the textbook. The textbook's had 45 or something like that. This is 1,450. Tells us the mean, median, mode, standard deviation, variance for each of the questions that have asked as well. All right, so we can look at that and get a bit of an overview, and we can also scroll down and we go to begin with, which one are you? And it's got here age. So we can see straight away most of our people are actually 18 to 24 because that's got the highest percentage in there. All right, and so on and so forth with all of these ones here. Now I'm going to scroll right down to get to our graphs, and we've got, I'm just going to click here, so histogram, here we go. This is our first histogram. It doesn't tell us what these values are, but we've just looked at it. What the first one was 18 to, hang on, I'm just going to, the first one was 18 to 24, alright? So in here, if we go to our histogram, we know that's the 18 to 24 one. And if we scroll through here, in the past 4 weeks, approximately how many times have you yourself eaten from a fast food restaurant? And it can actually show the different amounts and the frequency of people that have chosen that. So how many people have chosen one time a week, or was it one time every 4 weeks, whatever it is, whatever the responses are, it displays it in there. Now the reason why we'll do this, you need to answer that. So what I want you else to do as well is to open a Word document. I've actually done that here already, so I've had a Word document, and we're going to write in here, running a frequency distribution is useful because, and you need to watch the lectures and I explain that in there, alright? Now the next activity is going to be, let's go back to here. So provide a histogram for income, D6. Now what I want to do there is go back to my SPSS, and we go analyze descriptive statistics. Oops, we're doing frequencies, and now I want to get all of these ones, so I'll press Control A, move them all back there. We don't want those. We wanted we'll do display variable name, so help us out, and it was D6, I think it was, off memory, which was income, right? So I only want to do one on that now. Now to make things easier, I'm just going to close this output one. I'm not going to save it. So what that does now is, when I run the analysis, it's going to start a new output in there. Right, so a new output window. So in here we go, statistics. In here I'm going to have the same mean, median, mode, standard deviation, variance. So we click continue. In the charts, it remembers what we did last time. So this can be a little bit tricky because this is where my settings might be a little bit different than yours, because if I run through them again, so make sure you've checked those off. If you haven't got them checked, it's because you haven't done it yet. Next time you do it, it will remember what you've done last time, basically. So then you click OK, and then we click OK to run it. And this will be a lot quicker because there's only one of them. And it spits out a histogram, right, which is nice and cool. Now for our thing here, we have to provide a histogram for income, which is the most frequent mode. So what I want you to do then is go to your output file. If you click on this, you can, or right click. Does that work? Hang on, my computer is, I've got a lot going on this computer at the moment, and it doesn't have a very good graphics card. So, alright, so if you click here, you can just do copy, alright? And when you do copy, you can go to your Word document, and I've already got it there, I've already prepared it, so I knew what I was doing, and basically paste another one, right? So I've got two in there now, they both don't fit on one page. But I only need one, so I can just delete one, right? I'm just trying to get you to show that how to submit this, I just want you to open a Word document. You can call it whatever you want. I've called this BMA 331 Workshop 10. Answer the first one. Running frequency distribution is because, now we go, we've provided the histogram, and you go, the most frequent category of income is, and this is a very simple thing to answer. I'm not going to give you the answer because I want you to do it. Then you just write that in there. So I'm teaching you how to do the SPSS part because I'm worried people might be getting stuck on that. I'm not actually going to try to give you the answers. Right. So now the next one is, I've actually prepared ahead here, so don't worry too much about that. So the next one here is exercise 2, which is cross tabulation for eating frequency. Now, so question 23, which relates to the case study in the textbook. Question 23, cross-tabulate the fast food consumption classification. This is the recoded data, so it's very important that we use the recoded data. Recoded S3A, and see the questions above, which we did last week, with the following demographic characteristics. Some recoded as specified for chapter 10, so I've made it easy for you. I've given the recoded data. So if you've made mistakes last week, it doesn't matter. I've given you the data that you should have got to last week as a fresh start. So what we want to do is we want to see, well, eating frequency, we want to see if these demographic characteristics here relate to the food consumption, the eating frequency, right? So, and these include age, gender, payment method, number of people living at home, their education level, income, employment, marital status, and region. And then we have to interpret the results. So to do that, I'm going to go to my SPSS in here. I'm just going to close this output file again here. So because this is output 2, I'm going to close it so when it does the next analysis is going to be nice and fresh and you don't get confused. So I'm going to pull up this one here and I'm going to go analyze. And I've shown this in the YouTube video as well. We go cross tabs. In the YouTube video I explain it a lot more. So I'm going to right click here and bring up the variable names so it's easier for me to see what's going on. Scroll down. Now the key one that we're looking at here is S3A. So cross tabulate the fast food consumption classification. S3A. So let's pull that up there. Where's S3A? Recoded. Right there. Make sure you get this one and not this one, because this one isn't recoded. This is what we started with, and then last week we recoded everything, so now we're using that one. Now this is our main one, so this goes in the row. Right? We're going to see if any of these demographic characteristics relate to fast food consumption classification, like how much they eat. So let's go back to here. So now we need to have our, you have to go through them. Also, I'm just going to look at the textbook here. So the first one is age, which is S1. Up here, S1 is age, so we're going to put this in the column. Make sure you get that right. This is the independent variable, this is the dependent variable, the demographics. Next one is gender, S2. Put that in there, that hasn't been recoded. Payment method, D1. Now D1 was recoded, so make sure you get the recoded one. We're up to number of people living at home, D3A. Now, if you look in the textbook here, for D3, in here for D3, we've got multiple questions that ask that. So we've got D3A, with D3A 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to move all of those across because we want all the answers for those. They're recoded as well. D3. Education, which is D5 recoded in there. Income, which is D6 recoded. And employment, which is D7 recoded. And marital status, which is D8, that hasn't been recoded. And region, which is a tricky one because it's just called region, right? Alright, now once we've done that, we've selected which variables we're going to be analysing. So the main one, the independent one, is our S3A, which is effectively, if you look at here in the textbook, S3A says in the past 4 weeks, approximately how many times have you yourself eaten food from a fast food restaurant. So we're trying to work out if any of the things such as age, income, employment, all that stuff, explain or relate, if there's a relationship between those in characteristics and their consumption, how much they consume, right? So then the next thing we want to do is click on statistics here, which is, sometimes these will be ready to go, but we need to check. So we want to do chi-squared. So I should just say chi-squared. To know why we're doing chi-squared, you need to read the textbook. It explains that in there. In the lectures I explain what chi-square is. And we need to do the contingency coefficient and the phi and Kramer's V. Actually, I'm going to uncheck that for simplicity's sake. Often you'll do contingency, but we're going to be focusing on phi and Kramer's V. You can do that, you can choose these other ones, but generally the more of these you check that you don't need, it gives you more like analysis, but it's harder to know what's important then too, right? So I'm going to click continue there. Now this is also important, which some people missed. In here we're going to do the observed counts, right? And we want to do the percentages for the column. And I've explained this in the lecture. It's important that you get this right. The percentages are the column because that is the independent variable for us that we're measuring. And for this case, our independent variable for the column is going to be each of these demographic things, such as their age. And the reason why age is the independent variable is because it's independent of how much you eat, right? The more you eat doesn't change your age, right? But as you get older, that might change, your consumption patterns might change, right? So age is independent of consumption, whereas consumption may be dependent on your age. So that's what we're going to look at, right? So then we click, make sure we get everything else here, we click continue. Half the time it's making sure you've got the right boxes checked. And that's why I try to explain all this stuff in the lecture so you know why we're checking those boxes. And then I'm going to click OK. Now that's going to start running and doing all that analysis. And that's a lot of math just being done very, very quickly. So I'm going to scroll up to the top here. I'm going to drag this out here too. Alright, so if we go up here, you can see the top. So I can just click here, it goes to the top. Alright, now this is the code which the computer needs to know what's going on. When we click the buttons, it's basically writing the code to tell it what to do. It gives us a processing summary, a case processing summary. Now you need to make sure your case processing summary looks similar to this so that you've got the recoded ones in there. If you haven't chosen the recoded one, it's going to look different. You're going to get confused straight away, right? So if it doesn't look different, if it looks different than this, go back, try again, make sure you've got the right box, you select the right variables, and you've got the right boxes checked, right? This is our first cross tabs. Now I'm going to use these outputs. So in here, it's got lots of data. So it's basically saying, this is the category of consumption. We've got light users, medium users, heavy users, and this is the category of age. So we're trying to compare how age relates to consumption, and we're just displaying it in the box. Another good thing to check is if these are our independent variables, these are the ones that are adding up to 100, which is right. So we know we've clicked the right boxes here. That's all good. It's also got totals on the back here, which we don't completely need, but we know it's there. Now the first thing we're going to be doing when we check this is we're going to look at our chi-squared statistic. And in here, that one is 0.02, which is less than our alpha. Therefore, this test shows a significant relationship. The next thing we're going to look at is Kramer's V. And this here has a value of 0.74. And if you read in the textbook, it explains what that value is. It basically means there's a low. Oh no, so there's a significant relationship, but it's a weak one. If anything's below 0.3, it's weak. Below 0.3 and 0.5 is moderate, and it explains that in the textbook. Oh, sorry. Below 0.3 is low association. 0.3 to 0.6 is low to moderate. Above 0.6 indicates a strong association between these variables, the x-axis and the y-axis. Right. Now I'm going to go back to your the Word document that we're doing now. So I've written this up. So activity 2, I've basically written this up as I've pre-written it to save time. If I had to write this as we go, this video would be like hours and hours long, right? So I've written question 23 out basically in report format, saying fast food consumption, which is our variable S3A, which is actually recoded, but that doesn't matter, and demographic characteristics. So that's what I'm asking, how they relate. Now, to do this test, we actually formulate a hypothesis. Now, I haven't explained this a lot yet, but this is what happens, okay? I've gone through the lectures how to formulate hypotheses, and I've explained the value of them and the importance of the null hypothesis and the alternate hypothesis. So to do this test, basically we're writing a hypothesis. The null hypothesis is that there is no association between usage, right? And the usage is the, it's a little bit chunky, but it's basically the fast food consumption, so how much they use. So recorded usage of fast food, so the light users, medium users, heavy users. So is the amount that they use, or the category of their usage, is there an association with the age? And the null hypothesis would be the default, or what would mean, you know, just the expected, the status quo. So there's no association. So the alternate hypothesis has to be exactly the opposite. And you can say this is exactly the opposite because the only difference is that one word no. So if there's the exact opposite of there being no association is that there is an association between usage and demographic variables. Now, we're doing the chi-squared statistic because that's what we use for crosstabs. Chi-squared explains it in the textbook and also explains why we select our statistical significance at 5%. We get an alpha of 0.05, all right? So I've expected you to watch the lectures, the tutorials, so you know why I'm choosing those numbers. It's very important. These are the default ones. Right, so then what I'm going to do now is go back to our output, and in here, this first one is, so the Pearson's chi-squared, remember I'm going to go back to our thing here, there is no association. So the chi-square statistic is significant at, if it's less than 0.05, go back here, even says it here, Pearson chi-square, what's the value of that? So it even says significance there, is less, so it's 0.04, which is less than 0.05, so we know that's significant. So this table has a significant relationship between usage, the amount of their usage, and their age, right? Now we go down here, so that tells us if it's significant. If it is significant, then we can move on to the next box and look at, well, how strong is that? Or what's the strength of that association? And there we use Cramer's V for that, all right? Now I've got phi there and Cramer's V. It explains both of those in the textbook. The phi coefficient talks about the contingency coefficient, which you could include in there as well. Most of the time we'll be using Cramer's V, right? You need to look that up to know when to use that. I'm telling you now that for this test we're using Cramer's V because this table's bigger than 2 by 2, bigger than 2 columns by 2 rows, and this value is 0.074, which means it's a pretty weak relationship. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this, click, hold down Shift, click, click. Now I've got these three things selected. I can press Control C, copy, and I can actually, I'm just going to start another one, a Word document, so you can see what I'm doing. This is just going to be a throwaway document. Bring it onto this screen here. Alright, so this is just a new document. If I press Control V, ta-da, it posts it into here, right? This is what I want you to report on. This stuff, right? I don't want you to upload your SPSS files. I asked you to do that for the first week just to make sure that you had SPSS working and yada yada, all that sort of stuff. But for here, I want you to report this, these outputs here. Now I've printed these as words in here, so I can actually highlight things in here, which is cool. You can also, I'm going to paste, so I've got that in the clipboard, so I'm going to paste it again. I can also paste it as pictures. Oh, that one I can't. Hang on. I have to do one at a time for that. So I'm going to go back to here. If I just select this one here, Control C, or I can right click and copy, same thing, go there, and if I now paste it, I'll just paste it on this page here. So if I right click, oh, this computer's taking a long time because it's doing so much. Right, so if I go like this, and I can paste it as a picture too. Now, this is quite, the reason why I'm showing you this, because when you're writing up your reports later, I don't want you to spend your whole time mucking around trying to format tables, because it can be really annoying trying to play around with these things to get it to fit, especially when they get big. So if you just paste them as images, it's easier to format them, make them bigger and to fit in your Word document, right? I'm teaching that for your simplicity, right? So I've already done that into this one here. I've pasted it in there. So here's my table. Now, remember I said significant, so what I do is I highlight that, and I can do that there. Kramer's V, that's what I'm after, so I'll highlight that, and I can choose my highlighter. If you've got a Mac, I'm sure it's something similar. I'm not sure how you Mac users would do that, but there's the highlighter there. Now the reason why I'm highlighting that is because these are the values that I'm looking at. I'm saying yes, I've written it out here, the chi-square statistic is 0.04, so I've highlighted that because I'm talking about it, so I've highlighted it. There's a lot of other numbers in there, so if I highlight it, you'll drag your attention to it, which is less than the alpha, alpha of 0.05, and we set that up here, significance of 0.05. The null hypothesis of no association is rejected because it's less, so we can reject the null hypothesis, indicating that there is an association between fast food consumption and age. There's a significant association. Right, so now we've got that, I go, I know there's a significant association, I know it's quite weak, but now I need to work out what association is, and that's where this comes in. You have to look at the data and use your intellect. You know, you're halfway, you're nearly all the way through here, so you'll be pretty familiar with how marketing research works. You got to think about what you're measuring and what it's telling you. So in here we've collected these ones here. So in these age groups, which ones are the lightest users? So if I go lightest users here, so of the 40 to 45, actually 43 of those are light users, while 27.7 are heavy users. Now the reason why I'm picking on the 40 to 45 is because they have the highest one here and the lowest one here. So that's saying something, right? We're trying to find an association. So the old people that have the highest chance of being light users and the lowest chance of being heavy users. Now, so I'm going to pick on the 40s to 45 age bracket because of that. If I look at the other way around, I go, intuitively you'd go, well, I hope you'd think, all right, if I'm doing data for a, data analysis for a fast food company, they probably want to know who their, the heaviest users are, like who are their most frequent customers. So if you look here, the people that are going to be using it the most, the heaviest users are 25 to 29, right? That's 35%. So of all the 25 to 29, 35% of those were heavy users. Now, that's useful and that's handy, but remember we're looking for an association between age and usage, and these aren't the youngest people. And then if we flip it the other way, who are the lightest users, it's actually them as well, is not them either. So that's the 35 to the 39. So although there isn't an association, we know it's going to be fairly weak. Oh, hang on, I've highlighted the wrong one here. That should be that one there. The Kramer's V is 0.074. Did I? Right. Kramer's V is less than 0.3. So we know it's going to be, I'm just going to unhighlight that because that isn't what we're looking at. not right now. That is important, but you can see it's the same value as that, right? So Kramer's V is 0.074, which is less than 0.3, so that indicates a low association. And that is exactly what we're seeing on these percentages, right? It's not like the youngest are clearly the most frequent users, because the data's kind of spread out in the middle there. So when we write this up, this is going to be the hardest bit for you. So I expect you to go, yes, we have a significant association between these two variables. Kramer's V indicates a low association. Then I go, therefore those age 45, well, wouldn't even put that therefore, you just write, those age 40 to 45 are most likely to be light users. See, 43, most likely to be light users, and less likely to be heavy users. Now, I've written this in here just for example type thing. Those aged 25 to 29 are most likely to be heavy users, which is useful information. But remember, we're testing association, so it doesn't actually say anything about the association between age and the usage. It's just pointing out who the most likely to be heavy users are. So really, you'd be focusing on that one there. Those aged 40 to 45 are most likely to be light users and the least likely to be heavy users. So if you're targeting, 40 to 45s, you're probably doing the wrong thing, because they're the most likely to be light users, so they're going to be using it the least, right? All right. Now I'm going to go back to our output file here. In here, so that was our first test. So this is our, I'm scrolled right up to the top now, where I started from, our case processing, so that was our code, our case processing summary. Here was our first variable that we tested with, which is age and use. We've got those three tests. Now the next one is gender and use. So you can see here, light, medium and heavy, which is exactly the same here, light, medium and heavy. So the rows aren't changing, but the columns are, all right? So for here, we got male and female. Now, first thing we look at is Pearson's chi-squared, because that's our test statistic. Our value is way less than 0.05, our alpha, so we know that there is a significant relationship between gender and usage, right? Now, the next statistic we use, this is a 2 by 3, so we can't use a phi. We need to use Kramer's V, which is cool. We like Kramer's V, which is 0.114, which is still pretty low. So although there's a significant relationship between gender and use, it's not a very strong relationship. So what I want to do now, because it's significant, I want to report on this. I'm going to click on here, hold down my shift, there. I want those three things. I'm going to right click, copy, and I'm going to paste that into my Word document because it's significant, right? I've already done that in here. I've got those three things pasted in there, right? Now the first thing I've highlighted is this, to show that it's significant, and I'm going to write chi-square statistic is less than 0.05. Sometimes SPSS actually puts asterisks there when you set it up like that. So it is significant. Right. I'm just being very simple here. You could pretty much look at the textbook and write similar to there, but I'm explaining why I'm including this analysis in there. I'd write something in here saying Kramer's V is less than 0.3, so there is a weak, I think it was, is that the words that they used? Which indicates a low association between fast food usage and what was our independent variable, and gender, or sex I think it's called in the textbook, right? So you can put that in there. Now remember, we're doing the significance test at 0.05, because if I go right, scroll right back up to the top, remember when I wrote out my hypotheses, there is no association. The alternate hypothesis is there is association. We're testing at 0.05, so we're going to be 95% sure. Let's go back to consumption and gender. In here, significant, low association or weak relationship between the two variables. Now I look at here and go, well, what does, now I know that there's a relationship. I try and look at the percentages and see what is it. So of the males, most of them are going to be heavy users. Yeah, and of the females, most of them are going to be light users. So to me, that tells me that males are most likely, I think I've written there, males are most likely, and you can even put this in there. I do this sometimes when I write out reports to make it look cool and yeah, provide more explanation in the way you write it up, more detail in the way you write it up. Males are most likely, 35.9%, to be heavy users. Females are most likely to be light users. And I'm just writing this in there so you can see it, which is 43.2%. And least likely to be heavy users. Least likely, I'm just going to put this in there. So, oh no, hang on, that's total, this one here. So I'm going to add, I'm just going to colour that up, just so you know where I got the values from. 29.5, where's my percentage going? Percent closer, alright? Now that's what I want you to do. So I want all this stuff, boom, 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 and then you need to explain to me what's actually going on at the bottom. You might even want to bold that, I reckon, if you want. It's up to you, it's up to your formatting style, whatever works. So I've done A and B. So in here I've written out each of the independent variables that we tested. So we tested age, which was significant. We tested gender, which was significant. Now let's go to C, which is payment method. And this is where things start to change, I think. So in here, we've got recoded payment method. So we've got cash, credit card, and other. I think it's debit card other, all right? So in here, now we look at, first thing we do is go to Pearson's chi-squared. Everyone wants to check to see if their results are significant, hoping that they are, because if you get significant results, it means you can say something. But indeed, we have 0.3, and that is way more than 0.05. So that means these results are insignificant. Now, if the results are insignificant, we don't even bother looking at the strength of that insignificant. Yeah? Skip it. Bang, we're not reporting that. You do not report insignificant results. That's like saying, we looked for something, we couldn't find it, right? If you're reporting insignificant results, you're in dire straits. It means you spend all the time trying to do all that analysis and you're basically telling the client that you couldn't find anything. So you don't want to be doing that, right? So this is insignificant, so we will not report on this. So if we go back to the Word document that I've been writing up, prepared earlier, we've reported on age, which was significant. We reported on gender, which was significant, which is very significant. And hang on, I'm just going to delete that space in there. And we haven't reported on gender because it's not significant, right? So we go back there to the next one, which is, so that was, oh no, sorry. It wasn't gender, it was payment, right? Payment was insignificant. Now the next one is, let's try and remember all these variables floating around in my head. The next one is the number of adults in the household. Now this is 0.016, which is less than our alpha of 0.05. So this indicates that there is a significant relationship between the number of adults in the household and their consumption of fast food, how much they like, whether they're light users of fast food, medium users, or heavy users of fast food. So because it's significant, we go next to our symmetric measures and we go, well, this is more than a 2x2 table, so we can't use phi. We use Cramer's V, and that's 0.073, which is really low. So although there is a relationship, although there's a significant relationship between the number of adults and the usage, it is pretty weak. So we're still going to report it, but just bear in mind when we try and explain it, it's going to be a little bit difficult because there's not much in there. So I'm going to highlight that, highlight that, highlight that, copy them all. Yep, and I've already done this, but I'm going to paste it into here. and as I've done. So as I've pasted it, the first thing I look at is the significance, 0.016. It's significant. The chi-square statistic is less. So sometimes you do the chi-square statistic and you've got 0.016 is less than our alpha, indicating significant relationship between, I should write between usage and number of adults, but you know, whatever. And I'd write in here I shouldn't say very weak, weak Kramer's V is less than 0.3, indicating a weak relationship between number of adults in the household and fast food usage. Something like that, right? Because if you just go Kramer's V is less than 3, to us it kind of makes sense, but your clients won't know what they're paying for. That just doesn't, like, who's heard of Kramer V apart from us guys until we started doing this, right? So you need to explain what that is to make it meaningful, to turn this data, and what we're really doing at this reporting stage, we're going to cover this more in our lectures coming up. What's really important is that we don't just report numbers, but we turn that data into information which goes back to their management decision so they can do something with it. Alright, now we know it's significant, we know there's a weak relationship, so I'm looking here, which is the highest one, heavy users. When there's 4 or more adults in there, these ones are the most likely to be heavy. 4 or more are most likely to be heavy. So I should say this right, so of the 4 or more, they're most likely to be heavy users. When there's a household, when there's a household of 4 or more adults, they're also least likely to be medium users. So you can see why there's a weak relationship, because it's not like it's gone from light to heavy. It kind of goes light, medium, heavy. It's like a squiggly thing. It's not like a nice straight line. So also, who's the least? So these are the most. Who's the least? And you can see these 3 are actually fairly close. And these ones, it's tricky, right? So what I've written up is the household with 4 or more. I've picked on these ones again because that seems to be explaining the most things. With 4 or more are the most likely to be heavy users. And to me, if I'm trying to report to the client what's going to be meaningful for them, if they're a fast food company, Wendy's is a fast food company, they want to be knowing, well, you know, who uses it the most. And it kind of makes sense that the more adults there are, the more they use it, in a way, I suppose. Alright, so that's that one there. Now, let's go back to our SPSS output file. So that was number of adults. Now let's look at here, children. This is recoded, so children less than 5 years. So how many households have children with less than 5, like kids that are 5 years or younger in there? That's right. So we look at here, and this is significant. So this is looking good. We look at, so Pearson's chi-square is 0.000. So that's way less than 0.05, so that's looking good. Kramer's V is 0.097, so it's still pretty weak. Not a lot of explanatory power going on there. But let's have a look at the data to see what that makes sense. So I'm going to copy that, copy that, copy that. So hold down Shift, copy. I'm going to paste it into my Word document, which I've already done, of course. And here we go. So in here we've got children and usage. Significant, so I'll highlight that. I'm not writing this out every time anymore. You can if you want. Highly recommend you do it the first time to show you know what you're on about, but this, if you go on and on and on and on, it gets a little bit repetitive. What I'm really mostly interested in is you being able to paste this into a Word document and then explain what this means. So you go, significant, so weak relationship, but let's look at this. So we won't look at the total because that's not what we're really after. Which one's the heaviest user, which is this one here, so we'll look at those. These are the heaviest users, and they're also the lightest users, so let's focus on these guys. So, households that have children, like kids under 5, so if they have 2 or more kids in their house that are under 5, they are the... So of those households, they're most likely to be heavy users. They're also most likely to be light users. So I'm just going to write that. Households with two or more children under 5 are more likely to be heavy users and least likely to be light users, which makes sense because they've got kids and kids love fast food, right? So fantastic, write that up. Now that was the reason why we've got D twice. So you can see we've got the number of adults in the household and number of children, because when they've actually asked these questions, I'm going to show you in the textbook now. In here, they go D. What was it? It was D. Oh, it's got D3A. How many people in each of the following age groups in your home? Adults 18 plus, children under 5, children 6 to 12, children 12 to 17. So they're asking that multiple times, adults and kids. So we've got, because we've reported that multiple times, we've, let's go back to here. So D, people living at home, that was measured as adults, kids under 5, kids 6 to 11, and kids 12 to 17, right? So we've got multiple ways of asking D. So we've actually reported all the significant ones that showed the age of people in the household. All right, so that shouldn't be D, that should be, what's household, what's employment is G, right? So that shouldn't be D, that should be G. All right, so let's go to the next one here. So we're going, working our way down that output. We're looking for significant results. The kids, so households with kids 6 to 11, it's not significant. That's no surprise because it didn't show, I didn't post it in there. Kids 12 to 17, Pearson's chi-square is actually 0.242, which is greater than 0.05, so that's insignificant. So we're just going to ignore that. All right, the insignificant results. We won't even look at the strength of the relationship if there's no relationship there. Now we're looking at education. Now, education also is insignificant, so we want to ignore that one. We won't even bother looking at the strength of no relationship. What's the point? What's this one? Income. Now you'd think income would be, I'm surprised by this, you'd think income would be significant, but it's not. So we're going to skip past income and go to employment status. Now, in here, employment status is significant because the Pearson's chi-squared is less than 0.05. Kramer's V is 0.095, so it's still pretty weak, but when we look at, so I'm gonna, because it's significant, I'm gonna highlight those, Control C, copy them, and surprise, surprise, Kev's already pasted it into the employment status in there. Significant, 0.95. Now let's explain that. So we won't look at the totals, don't worry about that. Let's look at here. Which one's the heavy user, which one's the heaviest? These ones are the heaviest, these ones are the lowest. Of the light users, these are the most, so it's looking again that this column here has the most to explain. This one actually here does have a little bit to say because they are, of the full-time people, 35.7% of them are actually heavy users, which I think is something to say in of itself, but we're looking for a relationship between employment status and usage. And if you look at the difference between, of the full-time, 35% of them are heavy users and 34% of them are light users. So it doesn't really say a lot to us. It's not really meaningful in a way because about the same as heavy users and about the same of them are light users. So, you know, like full-time, yeah, sure, it's important in one way, but it doesn't explain a relationship between usage and employment status. Whereas if you look at these unemployed, oops, sugar. I'm just going to, oh dear, my computer's gone crazy. So if you look at the if you look at these unemployed people and retired people and homemakers, Homemakers is like people that stay at home, like like parenting people, full-time parents. That does have a little bit more to say, because of those, like more than double of them are light users compared to heavy users. So there's quite, when you're thinking about this column, only 20% of them are heavy, whereas 44% of them are light. So to me that says something. So people with no job, and that's a bit blunt and a bit crass, but I'm trying to keep it simple, right? So you might want to write up a bit smoother when you present it to the client, but basically people with no job are most likely to be light users and least likely to be heavy users. And that makes sense, because if you don't have a job, you're probably not earning a lot of money either, right? And you're at home, so you might as well cook, right? We don't know that from this data, but it makes sense. So people who work full-time are most likely to be heavy users. People who work full-time are most likely to be heavy users and least likely to be light users. Is that right? Yes, they are too. All right, cool. So there is something to say about full-time people here, but it's you can see the difference between the 34 and the 35 isn't a lot. So you might want to stick to that and be safe, so your client doesn't get confused, or you could add that in there as well. It's up to you. I'd probably just, because the 34 and the 35 are so close, I might just stick with that one. All right, now let's keep going through our one here. Are you single or are you married? And it turns out this is significant, so we'll report on this if it's significant. So we'll highlight those three. Copy. Not you. I'm going to shut this one down. That was the wrong Word document. That was a temporary one I showed, the first one. Let's go. Oh, great. Don't tell me. No, here, good. So this was significant. 0.0. Oh, yeah, no, 0.06. I thought that was 0.6 at first, but it's 0.06, so it's significant because it's greater than 0.05. Kramer's V is still very low, 0.084, so it's basically 0.1 when you're rounding it. Let's look at, so there's a significant relationship, even though it's quite a weak relationship. Let's explain it. And when we look here, we go people who are single are, of the people that are single, 41 are light users, 33 are heavy, which sort of explains it a little bit more than this one. So I'm going to pick on the single people here, because this one, 35 and 31. You could report as married people, but I think this explains it a little bit more. And you'd say something like, single people are more likely to be light users and least likely to be heavy users, which makes sense because if you've got a family, you've probably got kids, and that's going to both working. For whatever reasons, we don't know that yet, but it just makes sense, that one there. Right, now I'm going to go to the output file again, keep scrolling down. Alright, this is the last variable that we looked at, which was region, and it's insignificant because the chi-square is greater than 0.05, so we cannot reject the null hypothesis, so we have to keep the we can't reject the null hypothesis, so we have to keep the null hypothesis and just assume that there's no association between these. And we won't even bother with the symmetric measures, measuring the strength of the relationship if there's an insignificant relationship. Right, so that's pretty much it. So I've got down to the bottom of my Word document here. Now, that was 8 pages of statistical analysis. It's 1,000 words. Charts don't actually count to your word count, so that's pretty good. Now, if I look here, I've done exercise 1 and exercise 2. Right? I spent a fair bit of time explaining how to do exercise 2. I want you all now to do exercise 3. So I want you to do exercise 1 and 2, but on your own. I think I've helped you out enough here. Normally I don't do this video, but because it's distance and you don't get to have face-to-face time with me, I'm a little bit worried about people that have got questions and don't have answers to it. I want you to do exercise 3 and 4 on your own. If you get stuck, email me. I can always organise a Zoom session with you as well. All right. So that will be it for this. I look forward to seeing you engaging, and I look forward to reading your results, your output files. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.